All right, in all the yoga poses, the number one that most people aesthetically try to achieve or they chase the shape, it has to be wheel pose, right? No one ever sits there and says, oh man, I just don't have a good looking warrior two. What they'll say is, man, my wheel does not look very good. I don't have a very good wheel. It's a very judgmental pose, I guess. It's one that everybody's always trying to improve upon. So I thought I would give you 5 ways to improve your wheel. But just remember that improving your wheel does not improve your quality of life. Your quality of life doesn't get better because your wheel gets better. What gets better is in these 5 different techniques that I give you, or 5 different ways to improve wheel. Those 5 ways will improve your life, your quality of life, because you're gonna feel better, stronger, and more mobile. But if you stay to the whole end of the video, I'll give you a little tip on how to improve your wheel today. First way to do it is to do your CARs daily. So do your controlled articular rotations daily, which means get the shoulder moving in all the different directions using the muscles that move the shoulder. So the way we do this, and usually I do this standing, but I don't want to have to readjust my camera. So sit tall or stand tall. I like to take left hand to rib, right arm down by my side, right? Palm is gonna face forward. Now, what's gonna wanna happen is my torso is gonna wanna move and my shoulders are gonna wanna lift. We don't want that to happen. We wanna try to isolate the shoulder and just get the ball to rotate. So think we're gonna turn the screw in the shoulder, okay? So right arm down by the side. Take the arm across the body. Now notice how your body wants to twist and turn. Try not to let that happen. So you wanna stay chest forward, arm across. And then from here, reach your arm straight up toward the ceiling until it stops. Once it stops, it's critical to not try to keep going. The ribs are gonna wanna flare to get my arm up higher. I wanna keep the ribs drawing in, so just my shoulders moving. Now from here, rotate the palm out to the side, and then I'm gonna start to reach back. This is the tricky part. As I reach back, my body wants to do this. I wanna just reach my arm back. As the arm goes back, it's like I'm wringing a dish towel out. Rotate the palm up toward the ceiling, bring the hand down by the hip, and then we'll reverse it. Arm goes up, palm rotates out, reach the arm straight up toward the ceiling, bring it across, bring it down. I'm gonna do that one more time. So we're gonna go across without turning. We're gonna reach up without flaring the ribs. Palm's gonna rotate outwards. As we reach back, we're not gonna elevate one shoulder, we're not gonna turn with it. We're just gonna reach back, rotate the palm up toward the ceiling. Hand's gonna come down. And then to reverse it, arm goes up, palm rotates out, reach up, across, down. What that does is it maintains the range of motion we have. It builds better control of the muscles that move the shoulder. So when we're loading it in wheel pose, the shoulder is used to moving, using the muscles designed to do it. And also it just keeps the good nutrients coming in and it gets the bad nutrients out. So from a prep for wheel, it's a great thing to do. Okay, number 2, in the shoulders. We want to make sure that we have better internal rotation of the shoulder. Now, wheel pose is usually externally rotated. It is externally rotated, but depends on the degree for you. It's a externally loaded position, but the problem is your rotator cuff, you have one muscle that sits on the inside, right between the rib cage and the shoulder blade, called your subscapularis. And what that does is as you go to elevate the arm, it keeps the elbows from flaring out. But more importantly, it's the one muscle on this side of the shoulder blade, on the rib cage side of the shoulder blade, that stabilizes. And if it's not strong enough, it's not gonna be able to support the shoulder. And if it is strong enough, it's gonna be able to help create more power, more leverage as we get into wheel pose. So it's important that we strengthen that muscle. And the only way to strengthen that muscle is to internally rotate the shoulder. So what I would first do is come into the sleeper stretch. And when you come into the sleeper stretch, you can always have a block or a pillow underneath your head. But you're gonna come onto your right side. Come all the way down onto your right side, bend the elbow to 90 degrees. Now you want your elbow not straight out from the shoulder, about an inch or 2 down, right pointer finger up toward the ceiling. You can have your knees bent or legs straight. I like to bend the knees so I'm just in a little bit more stable position. From my upper arm, just like we did in our cars, I'm gonna rotate so now the pointer finger is pointing at the belly button, okay? And then left hand's gonna come to the wrist, about where you'd wear your watch, right? And then from here, you're gonna press down until it stops. Now notice you see how my shoulder wanna lift off the floor? You wanna keep the back of your shoulder on the floor and hold it here. Again, you can have your head down, it can be on a pillow, it can be on a block, it can just dangle in space. But you're just gonna find a hard stop, and once you stop moving, don't try to go further. Right now, we're just trying to calm the nervous system. Now, this isn't necessarily getting into the subscap from a strength standpoint,
but what it's doing is it's creating space in the deepest tissues to allow the ball to rotate just a little bit more. So let's say we've been here for about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. I would recommend just a static hold for 90 seconds to 2 minutes. And then you're gonna hold steady, but with your right arm, you're gonna press back into your left hand, just 20% of your strength. So I'm pressing back, like I'm trying to come out of the stretch, but my left hand's not moving. And then I'm gonna take it to 40%. And then I'll take it to 60%. Take a breath in, squeeze my whole body. Inner thighs are gripping like I have a block between them. Biceps are flexing like I'm looking in the mirror. Belly's drawing in. And then as close as I can to 100%, I'm pressing my right arm back into my left hand. Now my left hand's not moving. I'm just doing this for 10 seconds. Right? This should be pretty uncomfortable. This should be shaking, and that's totally fine, but it's just 10 seconds max hold. For another 3, for 2, and now the opposite 1 right away is 100% strength. Pull my right arm away. So I'm trying to create, pulling this forearm to the floor, away from this left hand. Now I'm using the front of the shoulder for 10 seconds. Again, as hard as we can, we press down like we're arm wrestling a ghost for another 3, for 2, and then left hand comes down 1, and you decide just went further because we just created tissue. We created more space in the deep tissues, allowing the ball to rotate a little bit more. So why is this important? When we go into wheel pose, it's a highly leveraged position, highly loaded position. The ball needs to be able to rotate. So then I would just kind of hold it here at this hard stop again, wouldn't try to go further, do it for about 30 seconds, and then I would do it all over again. So imagine I've been here for 30 seconds, so it's 20%, I'm pressing my right arm back into my left hand. My left hand's not letting it move. 40%, 60%, hold it, grip the block, squeeze the biceps, draw the belly in, and then as close to 100% as I can, I'm trying to push my right arm through my left hand. For another 4, for 3, for 2, for 1, and then pull the right arm down. Again, I'm arm wrestling the ghost as hard as I can, 10 seconds. Now I'm going in the opposite direction, getting the front of the shoulder now to try to pull me into position. This is where the subscap kind of gets involved. For another 3, 2, 1, relax, press down. You see I just went a little bit further again. Take a breath in, and then relax that. So I got more flexible for a brief moment because I tricked the nervous system. But it's just like lifting weights. I can't go to the gym, do a couple bicep curls, and look all big and swole, right? I got to do it over and over again. So the more you do that sleeper stretch, the better your internal rotation is going to be, the more space there's going to be for this ball to rotate. But my next favorite, this is the way to strengthen the subscap. So when we're going into wheel pose, we have 1, more power, more strength, but more importantly, we have more control. So the shoulder's not getting all wobbly. We can press through and hold the length. And the way this will be is you'll take your right arm out to the right, 90 degrees, right? Like you're in a 90-degree bend in the elbow. Now what's gonna wanna happen is the elbow's gonna wanna drop. What's gonna wanna happen, the shoulder blade is gonna wanna roll forward and up. What you're trying to do again is think, keep everything still, turn the screw. So I'm just gonna take my knuckles and rotate down to the floor till it stops. Now you see this shoulder is a bad shoulder for mine, so I don't have as much rotation on this shoulder as I do here, okay? But see, if I drop my elbow, I can rotate. If I roll my shoulder forward, the knuckles get down. What I'm trying to do is pull myself into position and hold it here, okay? And then I would rotate it back up. And I would just do this about 5, 10 times, 3 times, 3 reps. So I do about 10 reps, 3 sets. Okay, just rotating back and forth. Now, if you want to take this up a level, I got it for you. If you have resistance bands, what you'll do with the resistance band is you'll do the same exact thing, okay? But what you'll do, I'm going to do it on the left arm just so you can see it a little bit better, is I have it anchored back there to my stationary bike about where my shoulder, about shoulder height here. My elbow, again, straight out from the shoulder. I have light weight on the resistance band. But what I'm going to do is take that left elbow, try to hold it in position, and just rotate down. And then I'm going to control the rotate back up. So what I'm doing right here is I'm working the subscap in a strengthened position, and then I'm easing it out while using the external rotators of the shoulder. So I'm just building strength and control in muscles that help support the shoulder, which then will allow the bigger players like your lat and your serratus to really drive down into your wheel pose. But what you don't want in that one, again, is you don't want shoulder blade rolling forward. You don't want the elbow kicking way back there. You're just rotating with that resistance band here. All right, tip number 3. You're gonna hate when I say this. Do more dolphins.
Nobody loves dolphins unless you're me and you're just a little bit crazy, okay? Dolphins are a perfect way to improve your wheel pose. The shoulder does the same thing. The shoulder is loaded in a similar manner, and it creates length and strength in a muscle that tends to be short and weak. What I mean is it takes your lat, which is connected to the inner bicep, fans along the back into the spine, down into your thoracolumbar fascia, big thickened tissue back here, and the fibers then run in the direction of your opposite glute. So it is a big stabilizer to the shoulder, big power driver of the shoulder, and it tends to be a little bit weak. And it tends to be a little bit short. Why? Because we sit like this all day. And then we come to yoga and we're like, oh, let's get in a wheel pose. Let's take that muscle, let's lengthen it as much as possible and load it to death. But it's not a muscle that's very strong, and it's not a muscle that's very long for most people. Yoga is really great at lengthening it. If you do a lot of dolphins, it's going to be really good at strengthening it because it is the same shoulder action as wheel pose, and it's loaded the same way. So, dolphin. The way to get dolphin to improve your wheel is to treat dolphin how I would treat it, as it's a shoulder pose, not a leg pose. And what I mean by that is when you come into dolphin, most of the time people are trying to get so close with their feet to their knees that when they press their shoulders back, it's more of like a vertical 90 degrees in the arm, and then the back starts to go back. Now my lats are getting some length. It's more length than if I was here, but it's not much more. I want to actually get that elbow as high as possible, sort of something like this position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk till I find a hard stop. And then I'm going to bend my knees because I don't care about my hamstrings because I want my wheel to be better. My hamstrings don't have to be longer. I'm going to press into my forearms, into my elbows, into my hands to get my chest back towards my feet, and then squeeze the armpits towards each other so you feel the muscles all along the side body. It's like I'm trying to clap my armpits here. Okay? So the more you do dolphin. So anytime you do chaturanga, just don't do an up dog. Take it to the floor, sphinx, forearm plank, dolphin. That is going to create more length, more strength in the lats. Okay? So you want to improve your wheel. Biggest thing you can do, to be honest with you, add more dolphins into your practice, but use dolphins as a shoulder pose, not as a leg. Now you're probably going, it is a shoulder pose. No, most people say it that way, but then they treat it as a hamstring pose because they try to get those feet so far forward that they're not getting the full length in the chest. So bend the knees, lengthen the outer armpit, press the chest back, use dolphin to improve your wheel. Tip number 4, strengthen the glutes, strengthen the hamstrings. Yoga is really good at stretching the hamstrings, pretty terrible at strengthening the hamstrings, unless you know what you're doing, okay? So a couple of different ways to strengthen the glutes and the hamstrings, because if the glutes and the hamstrings, what do? The glutes and the hamstrings, when they fire, they're going to extend the hip. And wheel pose is a big extension of the hip. Most of the time, traditionally, they would have told you don't use your glutes, which is absolutely crazy, okay? Use your glutes. But we also don't use them enough to create more extension through the hip, right? We get into the pose and then they just kind of soften naturally because we're not still engaging them. We want to make sure that the hamstrings are strong enough to be able to hold you through the duration of the pose, but also be able to potentially take you further into hip extension, okay? So my favorite ways to do this in my yoga practice or any sort of daily life, I'm going to come into Sphinx pose. And then from here, I'm going to, without increasing the weight on either one of my hip points, the hip points stay the same. Squeeze the right quad, feel the hamstring, or not the hamstring, feel the kneecap lift, and then keeping the quad engaged, lift from the hamstring. So I'm not rolling open. If I feel the weight shift into this hip point, I'm rolling open, I'm not using the back of my leg. And where you're gonna feel this is the center of the hamstring, right? Right now we're working into the belly. I would hold this for a few breaths and then bend the knee, flex the foot, stomp the ceiling. And where's this getting? This is more butt, okay? This is now the glute, and now it's trying to really pull us into a back bend. Re-squeeze the quad, hold the leg, bring it down. Do the other side. Squeeze the left quad. Feel the kneecap lift off the floor, lift the hamstring. Lift it, lift it, lift it, lift it, lift it. And then flex the foot, bend the knee, stomp the ceiling. So I'm working both the hamstring when the leg is straight and more butt upper hamstring when the knee is bent. And we want all of that to be strong. And then re-squeeze the quad, lengthen the leg, bring the leg down, okay? That is a go-to for me to strengthen the glutes and the hamstrings, because this is trying to pull me into a back bend. I am simulating what I want them to be doing in wheel pose. The second one to get the hamstrings and the glutes is I'm gonna come into a belly down dancer, but I'm gonna keep my forehead on my forearm. So I keep the forehead on the forearm, grab the foot, and then from here I lift from the hamstring. And when I can't lift the hamstring any further, then I kick. So I'm getting a nice quad stretch, which in the next tip, you're gonna learn what that's all about. But also I'm getting the hamstring lift to try to pull me up, but my head's gonna stay down for this one. So I'm staying all in the hip here. Good. And then release that. Come all the way down, and you can switch sides. If you wanna work more hamstring glute in a more of a back bend, you can do the same thing, but keep your head lifted. And when we're here, this is more back bend. So this will simulate more like wheel pose fully. I maybe lift the back leg, I maybe float the left arm, but what I'm looking for, and this will go in any wheel pose, my upper back, mid back, low back, glute, hamstrings, all working with the same intensity. I wanna make sure the entire post chain is working here. And then go ahead and relax that. Good. If you wanna switch sides, switch sides. All right, last tip. In wheel pose, we're extending the hip, so we're strengthening the back of the body, but we need to open the front of the body. And because we sit, right, just like the lats, the hip flexors, the quads, they tend to be a little bit weak and a little bit short. So strengthening them and lengthening them is critical to getting a wheel pose, because wheel pose is not a passive pose. In this right here, in Anjaneyasana, if I just came down and I was here, I'm getting a nice stretch to part of my hip flexors, okay? But in wheel pose, when I'm up in wheel, I can't just soften into my quads. My quads they're not just stretching, because they are loaded because I'm pressing them into the floor. The quads are working really hard in wheel pose. So in order to get the quads prepped for openness and strength, because in wheel pose, they need to be open and they need to be strong. Bring the hips back over your left knee. You're gonna change Anjaneyasana. You're no longer gonna practice it like this, because this is worthless anyways. Bring the hips back over the left knee. Press into the left foot, pull the foot forward. Now I'm getting strength. By pressing into the foot, the quad is now loaded. Take the peace fingers, lift the hip points, and then keeping the hip points lifted, I'm gonna go forward until I stop. This is the length. This is the strength for the hip flexors. This is simulating what wheel pose does. So I'm pressing in the left foot, I'm pulling forward, lifting the hip points up, length and strength, and then I'm gonna turn the glute and the hamstring off. And then if you wanna reach the arms up, right? Whatever you wanna do. But take Anjaneyasana this way, create eccentric strength, length and strength at the same time. Good. And then my favorite way to build length and strength in the quads, because the quads, your primary hip flexor runs from down here all the way up, crosses the hip joint and attaches to your pelvis. It's called your rectus femoris. It's one of your quad muscles. So the quads are the primary driver of wheel pose. From the front side, they're the thing that needs to be open the most from the front side, okay? So the way we would do this is we set up for camel, and you may have done this with me before for camel. It's a beautiful way to get into camel, but we're doing it solely to build length and strength in the quad muscles. You'll come up high like you're coming into camel pose, tuck the toes. Press the hips forward, draw the lower ribs in. So you have a line, shoulders to hips to knees. We're not back bending. I'm not going this way. I'm going to take this entire line and I'm just gonna lean as far back as possible, feel the quads lengthen and strengthen, and then I'm gonna come all the way back up. And I'm gonna do that about 3-4 times, and then take a little bit of a breather, do that about 3-4 more times, okay? So for a total of like 12 to 15. If you want a little bit more challenge, untuck the toes. But what I see a lot is people do this, or I'll see a lot of, even with the toes tucked, we're not doing this, even though that's not a terrible thing because it's simulating drop backs. It's not getting the quads the same way. So I want to maintain my line, and I'm just going to lean as far back as possible, come back up. Again, 3 to 4, maybe 5 times, take a breather, do that three rounds, about 12 to 15 times. Strengthen, lengthen the quads, you'll improve your wheel. I promise a bonus for those who made it through the entire video, okay? And to improve the wheel today. So what we talk about? Number one, we want to do our cars, right? Get the shoulder moving, just the shoulder, using the muscles that move it. We want to do that daily. We talked about how we need more internal rotation of the shoulders. We have the sleeper stretch, and then we have the paddle rotations. You can add the band if you want. We talked about how we need to make sure that the lat is long and strong. Great thing for that, more dolphins. The more you can do dolphin, the better for your shoulder, the better for your wheel pose. We talked about how we need hamstring strength, glute strength to be able to pull us into back bends, to be able to push the hips up into deeper hip extension and wheel pose. And then we talked about how the quads and the hip flexors need to be strong and long. Okay, all of those things are not gonna get better today. It's repetition. Doing it over and over again, just like those bicep curls, that's gonna get you there. What we need though is a little bit of encouragement to get better today, right? I need to leave you with a little bit of a nugget to get better today. And the way this works is like you're sitting there for wheel pose. Come on into it, right? I like to take my hands a little bit wider. That would feel better. That feels better in my body. Now, as I start to come up, I'm just gonna come up just a little bit, right? I'm just start to lift the hips like I'm coming into bridge pose. Now the elbows wanna widen, I'm gonna let them widen. I know every yoga teacher's gone, no, wrap the elbows in. No, it's okay, right? Let the elbows widen a little bit. But what I'm going to do is actually pull my shoulder blades, like I'm trying to put them into my back pockets. I'm going to pull the shoulder blades down to lift the chest up a little bit. You can see I'm lifting the chest up, and then I'm gonna maintain that chest lift as I press up into wheel pose, right? As I press up into wheel pose, and then I'm gonna come back down. I'll do that one more time. Okay, so normally, what do people do? They place the hands, they may come to their head or not, and then all they do is they start from here and they go up into wheel pose. But what happens a lot is the shoulder, we need the bottom tip of the shoulder blade to kind of roll down and out and then lift up. Because if I just reach my arms up, there's going to be a stop. But if I get that shoulder blade to pull around the side body, that tip's got to go down and then out, like a circular motion, like we're kind of scooping the shoulder blade. We want to roll the shoulder blade out and up. Now I can get all this more range of motion through the shoulder. So what I'm looking for is, as I'm about to start, whether I'm coming to my head, I can always come up to my head or not, same thing. But what am I going to do? I'm going to try to pull my shoulder blades into, like I'm trying to basically scoop the chest. So shoulder blades into my back pockets, scoop the chest with my shoulder blades, and then press up into wheel pose, right? If my elbows want to widen a little bit, I'm going to tell you this right now, let them widen. When you get up to the top, what you want to think about is, just like we did in dolphin, clapping the armpits towards each other, okay? It's okay if the elbows are pointing out to the side, I promise you, right? Hopefully, that will help you feel more comfortable, more confident, maybe even give you a little bit more power, because that scoop is going to give you more leverage to press. Right? So the way it will look like is this, right? Instead of just going from here to here, like I'm in wheel pose, what I'm actually trying to do is shoulder blades, or not shoulder blades, the bottom tips kind of down into my back pockets. You see me I'm starting to lift through the thoracic spine, and then I'm going to go from here into wheel pose, okay? Give it a go. So that's my bonus tip. What do we need? We need more shoulder movement, cars. What do we need? Internal rotation. What do we need? Lat length, think dolphin. What do we need? Quad length and strength. What do we need? Hamstring strength, glute strength. And then what we can do is we can just already start the motion of the shoulders to shoulder tips into the bottom pocket, scoop the chest. It's like they almost think like they're shovels. They're just kind of scooping you up to give you just a little bit more power into your wheel pose. Give it a go. Let me know what you think. Maybe leave it in the comments. If you're not already subscribed, subscribe to the video. My newsletter, I put these little tips out all the time, so make sure that you subscribe to that as well. There's a link in the video notes down below, so check it out.